Hey math enthusiasts, I'm here to review some of the practice problems from this section about writing equations of circles. So for these first couple examples, what I have to do is identify the center and the radius from the equation of the circle that they give me. Now, it helps if we remember what that standard form is. So x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. So right away I can pick out that r squared is equal to 3. But down here for the radius, they just want r. So what I'm going to have to do is take the square root on both sides to get r by itself, which tells me that the radius is the square root of 3. The other thing I need to pick out is the center. So h and k represent my center. So x minus h and y minus k. So that tells me that my h and k are here, and my center is going to be at positive 5 because this is minus. And then since this is plus here, it tells me that my y-coordinate for my center is negative 2. For the next problem, start off the same way. Identify your h, your k, and remember this is your radius squared. So if 16 is my radius squared, that means that my radius is going to equal 4. The square root is 16. Then for my center, as I said for the last problem, it should be x minus h in here, but since it's plus, that tells me that my x-coordinate for my center is negative 2. Since this one is minus, then I'm essentially just taking out the 1 for my y-coordinate. So my center is at negative 2, 1, and my radius is 4. For this next problem, now they want the equation. So they give me my center at 0, 0, and they give me my radius. So, as I said before, if it helps, just write down what that standard form is for the equation of the circle. Then I can just plug in everything I have into my equation. So, remember that this is your h and this is your k here, and then obviously your radius is 7. So I'm going to replace this h with 0, this k with 0, and this r with 7. Well, when I plug in x minus 0, that's just going to give me x. So it's going to give me x squared. Same deal here, y minus 0, that's just going to leave me with y, so it's going to be y squared. And then it's going to equal my radius squared. 7 squared, which gives me 49. Next problem deals with the point of tangency. Alright, that's just where my tangent line touches my circle. So there's my tangent line, and it touches right here at point x. So my answer for that is just going to be x. After that, they want a minor arc. Let's clean this up real quick. Minor arc would be anything less than halfway around my circle. So let's say I start at point D. I could go from D to F. That would be a minor arc. All right, and then for my symbol for arc, if you remember, it's that little curve up top. Now, if I wanted to, I could go from D to C, or from D to A. All right, those would also be considered minor arcs because they're less than halfway around the circle. Next one, they want a major arc. Well, a major arc is going to be more than halfway around the circle. So let's say I start at D. I can go from D to A to X, let's say. So I put down D, A, X. I need 3 letters to name it, because if I just said DX, for example, it would only bring me this direction, which is a minor arc. Next one, semicircle. This is exactly halfway. So we can either go halfway on the bottom, if I want to do that, or I can do halfway on the top. All right, you could name it with 2 letters if you want. If I just say GD, it's understood that the arc I'm referring to is the semicircle. This will draw. Or you could name it with 3 letters. So if I was talking about the arc up top here, I could say GCD if I wanted to. Either way, I'm still talking about the same arc. I'm still talking about that semicircle. Next, let's take a look at some of these practice problems. So for the first couple, they just want us to find the center and the radius from my equation. So if it helps, maybe up top, write out what the standard form of the equation is. X minus h, y minus k squared equals r squared. So I need to pick out h and k, which are my center, and obviously r for my radius. Now, for this first problem, all we have is x squared and y squared. That tells me that h and k are both going to be 0. So I know my center is at 0, 0. And then since my radius squared is 49, that tells me that my radius must be 7. After that, the next one, once again, they only give me x squared here. So I know right away for my center, my x coordinate is going to be 0. As for k, it looks like it's going to be positive 3 since it's y minus 3. So now that we have our center for the radius, I know that the radius squared equals 1. So my radius is actually going to be the square root of 1. And the third problem in this section, it looks like my h and k are here. My radius squared is here. Now, since this is positive and this is positive, that tells me that my center is actually going to be at negative 8, negative 1. Now, once again, my radius squared equals 72. So I just need to take the square root of that. So technically my radius is just going to be the square root of 72. And if you wanted to try to simplify that, we could do 36 and 2, which would turn into 6 radical 2. But you can just keep it as square root of 72 if you want. For the next couple problems, now it's your job to write the equation. So identify your h, identify your k, and identify your r, and I'm essentially just plugging everything into my equation. So if you remember, it's x minus h, which in this case is 2, squared. Now, technically it's y minus k, but k is 0. So that's just going to be y, and then don't forget to square it, and then it equals r squared, which is going to be 4. For the next one now, my center is at 0, 0. So remember, this is your h, this is your k, this is our radius. So technically it's just going to be x minus 0, which is just x squared, y minus 0, which is just y squared, and then I'm going to have 5.2 squared on the other side, which gives me 27.04. Next problem, do the same thing. Identify your h, identify your k, and your radius. Now, since this is negative, remember your equation is x minus h. Well, since it's a double negative, it's going to become plus 7 squared. And then y minus k, well, that's just positive 2, so it's just going to be minus 2 squared. And then it's going to equal r squared. So I'm just going to take that 3, square it, which is going to give me 9. So this next problem, now we need the equation of this circle. So I need to locate the center and figure out what my radius is. So first thing, the center appears to be at 1, negative 1. As far as the radius, remember that's just the distance from the center to any point on the circle. So from the center to this point on my circle, it looks like it's 3 units. So I know my equation is going to be in that standard form, x minus h squared, y minus k squared, and that's going to equal r squared. So remember, this is your h, this is your k, and obviously my r is 3. So for my final equation, it's going to be x minus 1 squared plus y. Now, since this is negative, it's going to turn into plus 1 squared equals the radius squared. So I'm just going to take that radius, square it, which gives me 9. For the next problem, same deal. You're trying to figure out the center and the radius of this circle and graph it now. So remember, this is your h, this is your k, and this is your r squared over here. So right away I know that r squared equals 49. So when I take the square root of both sides, I know that my radius is going to be 7. As far as the center, this is your h. So I know that one's just going to be positive 3, but since this second one is plus, I know my center is going to be negative 1 for the y coordinate. Now we actually have to go through and graph this. So I know my center is at 3, negative 1. There's my center right there. And my radius is 7. So that means I'm going 7 units to the right, going 7 units up, 7 units down, 7 units to the left. So I have my 4 points marked to represent my radius, the distance from the center to any point on the circle. So the last thing I'm going to do is connect these points that I drew with the best circle I can.